Welcome back to the second part of the Ghosts in the Tower, and I've spoken about Anne Boleyn and Thomas Becket and Margaret Pole, and now I'm going to tell you more about the other ghosts like the two princes and Lady Jane Grey. Stay tuned. And welcome back to the Bric at Brac Shop. Now, if you've seen our last episode, you know I've been talking about the resident ghosts of the Tower of London, and I'm going to bring the second part of this special about the remaining few other ghosts at the Tower. And if you do like these episodes, click the like button and subscribe if you haven't already subscribed, and press the bell button so you'll be notified every time I bring a new episode out. And I've noticed a lot of you have actually missed me and actually have mentioned that where's my episode. So do subscribe and do press the bell, and that way you'll be notified when I do bring a new one up. And I have missed a few weeks because I haven't been well, and I think it's mainly because of maybe a few things that I might have attracted looking into all these paranormal subjects. Like when I was researching into the possessed dolls like Annabelle and Robert the doll, and I sometimes wonder if I've attracted things because some strange things have happened, or maybe I just don't notice them normally. And so I decided I'm going to bring an episode to you where you can protect yourself. Protection when you look into these subjects or research into these subjects. So that will be coming up in the next few weeks. So do subscribe and press the bell so you won't miss out. So, coming back to the Tower of London. There are so many ghosts in the Tower of London. It's probably one of the most haunted places in the country. I've already spoken about Anne Boleyn, probably the most famous ghost at the Tower. Then we had Margaret Pole, the oldest person to be executed at the Tower, and Thomas Becket, the first ghost to be reported at the Tower back in 1240. So I'm going to continue with some more of the resident ghosts at the Tower, like the two princes. Now, these were the boy princes that just disappeared. They were Edward VI and his brother Richard. Now, their father was Edward IV, and their uncle was Richard III, the famous Richard III that Shakespeare wrote about. Now, Edward IV died, and so his son, Edward V, was supposed to become king. He was only 12 years of age, though. Now, him and his brother was put into the care of his uncle, Richard III, the Duke of Gloucester. But even though it's within the family, there was so much greed there that Richard III wanted to be king. Now, Richard III did some investigation, and he was able to proclaim that the boy princes were illegitimate, and therefore he was the next in line to the throne. So he was crowned, and he was entrusted to look after the two princes. He brought them to London and had them live in the Tower of London. Now, they lived in the Garden Tower, which we spoke of in the last episode, which was the gateway to the tower from the river. Of course, after this incident with the two princes, the Garden Tower became known as the Bloody Tower. So Richard III wasn't just happy that he was king, he wanted to make sure that he would stay king. And so rumors have it that he actually organized the death of the two princes. Now, the story goes is that Richard III sent an assassin out to murder the two princes in the middle of the night. And he went in and he smothered one of them. And while he was smothering one of the princes, the other one woke up and he was actually stabbed to death. That's one story. Some say both of them were smothered, but either or, that's how it was concluded that they were murdered. Someone said that they were actually put into a box. Rumours have it that one of the priests actually found out what happened, and what he did was put the bodies in a box and had it buried near the tower, the White Tower. The princes actually disappeared and no one knew what happened. And there's also a theory that the princes weren't actually staying in the Garden Tower at the time, is what it was called, which became known as the Bloody Tower. In fact, they were actually staying in the White Tower, the main building in the Tower of London. But all of that is up to debate. In 1674, when they were doing work on the White Tower, the main building in the Tower of London, they found in the spiral stairwell a box with 2 dead children in it. Now, at the time, they were investigated, and they appeared to be the bodies of 2 children, one aged 12 and 9, the same age as the princes. And apparently in 1933, they had another look at the remains, and they conclude that it was the princes. So they found the prince's body in 1674, and they were then buried properly in Westminster Abbey, and that's where you can see them today, the 2 princes. So for a horrible death like that, it could be quite a shock to the soul, because apparently those 2 boys are still known to have been seen in nightgowns, just playing around the tower. So those are the 2 princes that people see around the Tower of London. And another ghost that people have seen is Lady Jane Grey. Quite a pitiful story for this young girl, because she was about 16, some say 17, when she was executed. And she was Queen of England for 9 days. Now, her uncle was King Henry VIII, and her cousin was Edward VI, son of Henry VIII and Jane Seymour, who was also a Protestant. Now, he was very young when he gained the throne, when he was 10 years of age. And he wasn't a very healthy child, and ended up dying when he was 15. When they knew he was terminally ill, they drew up a line of succession on who would inherit the throne. His half-sister was Mary, who then became Mary I, but she was Catholic. And so they didn't want her to bring Catholicism back to the country. And so they willed Lady Jane Grey to be Queen of England. She didn't like the idea at first, but then she reluctantly gave in and went along with it. So when King Edward VI passed away in 1553, she became Queen. Supporters for Mary I was gathering around and increasing, and so Parliament then changed their minds and disposed of Lady Jane and brought back Princess Mary, and she became Queen Mary I. Now, those that had instigated this whole idea of Lady Jane to become queen were all trialed for treason, and a lot of them executed. And Lady Jane was supposed to be executed, but being Mary I's cousin, she actually pardoned her and let her live for a little bit longer. However, a few months later, Mary I wanted to marry Philip II of Spain. And there was a rebellion against that because, again, Spain was a Catholic country. We have the Wyatt Rebellion. And Lady Jane's father was also involved with that rebellion. So they were all arrested. So was then Lady Jane Grey and her husband. And that's when Mary I decided, in the interests of the country, decided to have Lady Jane executed. So on the 12th of February 1554, her husband, who was actually staying in a different apartment in the tower, was taken to be executed, outside on Tower Hill, where the public executions took place, where the public could go and watch. And that's where she saw him walk off to be executed. And then later, she saw the horse and cart bring back his body. She was taken to the Tower Green, and that's where she was executed. It's quite sad. And to the executioner, she asked that it would be done quickly. She also asked him if he would do it before she was ready, to which he said no. So she knelt down, she put her blindfold on, and then she couldn't find the block. And she cried out, "What shall I do? Where is it?" And then somebody came along and actually positioned her in the position. And that's when the executioner came down with his axe and cut her head off. She was a very intelligent woman. She was trained in all the humanitarian educations, and she was one of the most learned women of her time, it was reported. And it seems like it was such a waste for poor Lady Jane Grey. Now imagine if she was Queen. Queen Jane. And you think, because of her upbringing and her education, we may have gone into our golden age of Queen Jane instead of the famous Elizabethan age. Interesting thought. And we move on to the next ghost. Now, he was actually executed in the Tower, but he spent a lot of time in the Tower. And that was Sir Walter Raleigh. Now we go to the later half of the 1500s. Now he was a writer, a soldier, a politician, a courtier, a spy, and also an explorer. And he was one of the favourites of Queen Elizabeth I. And he ended up being imprisoned in the Tower of London twice. The first time was when he married one of Elizabeth I's ladies in waiting, Elizabeth Throckmorton. He married her without permission and basically in secret, and so they were imprisoned in the Tower. Apparently it was just a few months and then they moved away. The second time he was imprisoned in 1603 because he was associated with the rebellion to dispose of King James I. However, he was pardoned and he was able to go on one of his expeditions to South America and search for lost treasures, El Dorado. However, he had ransacked one of the Spanish outposts, so he was arrested and sent back to England. And that was because he violated his pardon and the Spanish Peace Treaty of 1604. So he was imprisoned back in the Tower. And so he was taken to the Palace Yard, just outside Westminster Palace, which today is now the Houses of Parliament. And that's where he was executed in 1618. He was quite a well-known personality, and so it really shook the nation. His wife, Elizabeth Throckmorton, she was devastated by the loss of Sir Walter Raleigh, and she actually requested to have his head. So she had the head embalmed and placed in a red velvet bag, which she carried around with her till the day she died. And today, his head is now buried in St. Margaret's Church in Westminster. That's the little church next to Westminster Abbey. And probably because Sir Walter Raleigh has spent a lot of time at the Tower of London, that his ghost is still seen around the Tower. He's seen walking around, especially in the Bloody Tower and along Raleigh's Walk. And that is the little part of the walkway on the upper wall leading from the Bloody Tower, because that's where he used to do his exercises, and that's where he's sometimes seen still walking up and down. And there's most cases he's actually seen carrying his head. And that's another ghost that's seen in the Tower of London. There are so many ghosts that appear at the Tower of London. They even have animal ghosts. Now, the tower was used as a zoo. In fact, a grizzly bear from North America was given to King George III in 1811, and that's where the bear was placed. In fact, they've had other bears. In fact, they had a polar bear from the King of Norway in the past, in the 1200s. But the grizzly bear, he became known as Old Martin. And apparently they moved the zoo from the Tower of London to Regent's Park in 1832. And that's where Old Martin passed away in 1838. But there is a reported account of one of the soldiers. Now, in 1816, this soldier was supposed to have seen this bear, and thinking it was the bear that escaped from the confinements of the zoo. He actually stabbed at it with his bayonet, and it just went through the bear and got stuck in the door. And apparently it was an apparition of the bear. Now, it's pretty strange because apparently at the time Old Martin was the only type of grizzly bear in the continent at that time. So what was this apparition that appeared to the soldier, that this soldier actually took a stab at and got his sword stuck in the door? In fact, it was such a shock to him that he passed out, and he retold his story and died a short while later. So how do you explain the apparition of the grizzly bear when there's only one close by and still alive? Maybe the bear went astral traveling, out of body experience, and this is what the soldier saw. Who's to tell? I think quantum physics will explain most of these, because a lot of people say that apparitions and ghost sightings are the reenactment of the energies in the surrounding wars being replayed again. But how do you explain the stories where ghosts actually interact with people and you can talk to them and they answer back or tell you things? And maybe the spirits don't know, or they're still in their last thinking process before they died. Like Anne Boleyn, who was unsuspectingly had her head cut off when she wasn't ready, and that's why she still thinks she's about to be executed, and she walks around, but she knows her head's fallen off, and so she carries her head around, and she's still alive, but hasn't died yet. Is that what she's thinking? And that's replayed. Or her spirit. The energy is still there, recreating and trying to find closure. Who's to say? We'll all have an explanation for all of this. But that's only some of the ghosts. There's a few more ghosts still at the Tower of London. If you can, pop down and have a look at the tower yourself. It's quite a small complex. And you can have a look at all these places where these ghosts and spirit inhabit. So if you've liked this video, click on the thumbs up button, subscribe if you haven't subscribed, and press the bell so you'll be notified of my next video. And I will be bringing you a video on protection, because I wasn't well a few weeks ago, and I've noticed this coming up from my investigations, and it's probably all coincidence, but who's to tell? And it's always good to have protection, to be on the safe side. So that is one of my upcoming videos. And I'll still bring you some more hauntings, more possessed objects. And until next time, stay safe and be observant and beware. And I'll see you soon.